So years ago, one night in early May, early morning hours, it was still dark out, dogs start freaking out. We come out and we see a pair of eyes leaning on this fence basically, standing up, pushing on it. It was a bear. It was a bear that had basically just woken up from hibernation, and it was pushing on the fence. The fence was bending over. This is our poultry yard right here. So we let the dogs out, and what we didn't realize was that the bear had already come here where this fence had been attached to the back of this shed. That's before we had added this little wood shed back here. So the fence, and you can see it's still torn. We haven't replaced the fence. But the bear had torn the fence away from where it was nailed to this shed, and then used that to gain entrance to the poultry yard. Now since then, what I did is I just put a T-post in the ground, slid this pallet over the top of it, and then screwed pieces of wood over the fencing to keep it in place, and then screwed that, just scrap wood, screwed that to the back of the shed there. And that's held ever since. But don't go thinking that a fence is going to keep a bear out of some place it's motivated to get into. Similarly, this little poultry house is just made of plywood. And don't go thinking 3/8-inch plywood is also going to keep a bear out of some place it's motivated to get into. But what did keep the bear out, after it took a duck or two, was our dogs. So the dogs alerted us. We see the bear out here. We let the dogs out. I go get a headlamp. I go grab a dirty Harry, I'll call it. And so right here, right about where this corner of the fence is where the bear was standing. And the dogs, two of our dogs, there was kind of one over here, one over there. They were kind of jumping around and barking, and I was kind of quite a ways back towards the house. It was difficult to know what to do because my dogs were kind of jumping around, and so I took aim, and I based my aim off of the reflection of the bear's eyes in my headlamp, and I shot at it. Now, it was dark, and I don't know if I hit it or not, but I do know that it ran away and it never came back. I probably didn't hit it because I was trying to focus on not hitting my dogs, and fortunately I did not hit my dogs. So this is one of our heroes of that day. This is Sasha. She's about 12 years old now. She's a big, strong dog. She, at times, has been used as freight dog. She's pulled a lot of heavy loads of firewood, but she's also too old to do that anymore, and so she's just kind of retired. And then actually this other one is the other hero of that day. This is on the left, Flo. She's also a handy herding dog. She helps us get animals in and out at times. Come on, Sasha, come on, Flo. And she's a little bit younger. She's middle-aged. But Sasha and Flo were keeping that bear at bay. They were not scared at all. And they kept that bear roughly in place long enough for me to get a shot off. Sasha and Flo also both came from the same shelter. We went up to the shelter in Kenai, different times, but they are both shelter dogs. And they both came with a little bit of baggage, but they turned out to be great dogs. Now, the only other time we've ever lost livestock was back here behind these orchards. We had tethered a couple of our goats one summer day, and the weather took a turn. It got real stormy real fast. In fact, there was thunder. Thunder is rare around here, but I don't remember exactly where it was, but somewhere along this trail back here. But during that thunderstorm, things got really loud. There was hail on the roof and things like that. We didn't know what was going on. But I think we heard some loud goat sounds and came out here to investigate, and we found that one of our goats had begun to be eviscerated. That means gutted by some kind of canine. And we did see, after the fact, some canine tracks in some muddy spots. They were too big to be coyote, too small to be wolf, and they did go off in the direction of a neighbor's house. And in fact, that same neighbor, their dog had been on our property earlier that same day. So I think ultimately, when we're talking about threats to your livestock, neighbor dogs, or even sometimes your own dogs, are going to be your greatest threat. But if you have your own dogs, they're also going to be your greatest asset. So I wanted to finish that story, the one about probably the neighbor's dog starting to gut one of our goats as it was tethered during a thunderstorm. I ended up, first thing I did was end that goat's suffering. We pretty promptly butchered what was left and then, ate what was good to eat. We do not let things go to waste. That's kind of our personal policy around here. Something else worth mentioning is electric fencing. We don't really use that for keeping predators away, not that we're aware of. We do use some electric fencing to keep some of our animals in their enclosures or pens or whatever you want to call them. And that tends to work. I'm not sure if that has kept any predators away or not. If it has, we don't know about it. Now, it's much colder today. It's a little bit below 0 Fahrenheit. I'm a little more bundled up than usual. See, maybe my glasses are getting fogged up. Here's the oldest member of our team there in the brown. That's Kobuk. We got him over 15 years ago, back when we lived in the bush. One day I found myself on a chartered 6-seater Cessna, and somebody had to be dropped off in the village of Unalakleet. This is way out in northwestern Alaska. And another passenger on that flight had said, "Oh yeah, my neighbor just had puppies." And so I asked the pilot, "Hey, could you just kind of chill here at the airport for like 10 minutes while I go into town and get a puppy?" And the pilot said, "Sure." So I went into town and got a puppy. I put him in a little box and brought him home to my wife, and she was thrilled. You hear that? That's the neighbor security system. And we've got one more. Rufus! Here comes our final member of the team. And this is Rufus. We actually got him locally from somebody who also used to live out in the bush. And we got him because there was a program in that region where mushers would donate old sled dogs to village mushers. And we got Rufus because he is descended from one of Martin Boozer's dogs. And Martin Boozer happens to be one of our favorite mushers. And Rufus does, in fact, happen to be an excellent sled dog. Now, because 2 of our dogs are now too old to run, it's basically Rufus and Flo that pull the sled. And I'm not personally the one that runs them. Only a couple of times have I actually been the one on the sled, so nobody as heavy as me is what they're pulling. But so that's one reason that we have 4 dogs. At least at one point, all of them were pulling. But like I said, a couple of them are too old to do that now, and we're not going to make them pull when they're getting old. But so we have a nice, security system provided by these dogs. But they also pull things for us. They've pulled, sled loads of firewood. Sometimes we still use them for, short transport of firewood from the place where we fell a tree up to maybe where the cargo sleds are waiting at the snow machine. But it used to be, before we had snow machines, the dogs would do some wood pulling on their own, especially the big one, Sasha. She's a very strong dog, very good dog. Dogs are great to have on the homestead, not just for security, but they do like to work. Sled dogs love to run. It's in their genes, and I know that there's a lot of people that are against that, but until you've spent time around sled dogs, you don't really understand it, but they love getting hooked up to run. It's basically what they live for. There's a chicken thinking about whether or not it's worth coming out into the cold today. You can see that there have been some bunnies running around in the chicken/duck yard. That reminds me of the main predator when it comes to our smaller animals like this would be raptors, more specifically eagles. And for quite a few years they were never an issue, but just starting a couple of years ago, they started to take notice of our birds. And about 2 summers ago was the first time I actually saw an eagle land in this little yard, pick up a duck, and start to take off with it, but I was outside, and I was able to chase it off. But we did lose another duck or two last summer, and so we erected these poles here. We put a big net over the yard, an old fishing net that we found at the dump. But we got a really wet, heavy snowfall sometime this autumn, this past autumn, and it was heavier than we expected, and we didn't know it would accumulate on the net as much as it did, and it tore the net, so we had to take it down. If you can find some old fishing net to cover your poultry yard, that's a good way to keep your birds safe from larger birds that eat other birds. Because you can't exactly shoot at eagles. That's against the law.
The last thing I wanted to mention is urine. Now, I don't mean to like go online and order wolf urine or something, or actually have to buy it. I mean, if you have dogs, there you go. We take our dogs for at least one walk a day, kind of around the local area, and they're always marking the territory. And that's pretty powerful stuff for any other canine predator like coyotes or wolves. Lynx, if they're around, they're going to know what that is. They're like, oh, maybe we don't want to go over there. Bears are probably going to be like, oh, you know, that smells kind of like wolf maybe. Let's stay out of that area. I mean, especially if you have multiple ones, because they all have unique scents. And all of these land predators are famous for having excellent noses. So it's not like they don't know the smell is there, right? Anytime that some territory around your place is marked, those predators are going to know it. And the more it's marked by more things, the better. And you yourself can also be a source of that territorial marking. I know I do it. Again, strategic places all around, those land-based predators are going to recognize a scent as being, that's not necessarily something I want to go find out what it is. Because when it comes to these land-based predators, they do rely heavily on scent, whereas like birds tend to rely more on sight, right? That's why, even though like crows are not necessarily predators, but that's like why scarecrows work, right? It looks like a person and they're like, I'm going to avoid that, right? I don't know if that works on eagles. If you've ever tried making like a scare eagle, that would be a useful thing to know about. If you've, maybe erected a little scarecrow-like thing near your chickens or ducks or whatever you've got. Let us know if that's worked for you. But anyways, that's probably enough talking. These are the methods that we use to keep predators away. And it generally works. It's not that we haven't lost animals. Like I said, we've lost a couple of ducks to bears and eagles. We've lost a goat to what's probably a neighbor's dog. We've lost chickens to our own dogs. We might get a new dog. That dog doesn't know about chickens, right? And we have to train them. And then once they're trained, they don't go after the chickens anymore. It's kind of sad, but it does happen. Think about what your predators might be. Again, your own dogs, neighbors' dogs, coyotes, wolves, lynx, bears, eagles. You can also have like falcons, hawks, things like that. So there are things you can do for all of these. Electric fencing, strategic placement of urine, free urine, hopefully. It's not just good for compost and fertilizer. It's good for these other things. And good fencing to begin with. Secure structures for your livestock if you can. These are all things that we do, some of them intentionally, some of them unintentionally, but hopefully you found something in this video that can help you. If you've got more suggestions, please comment on that. Let us know other good strategies. Again, this isn't everything. It's just what works for us and what we do and what we're still trying to refine. So thank you for watching.